can a single race destroy the relationship between Ferrari and the FIA? What did the Italians discover in the leaked reports that blew up Frédéric Vasseur and turned the Brazilian GP into a major scandal for Formula One? Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix was not just another event on the calendar. It was the perfect setting for Ferrari to try to salvage some dignity in a season that was already shaping up to be one of the most disappointing in its modern history. Interlagos, a track steeped in tradition, drama, and unpredictable conditions, presented itself as a chance for redemption. But what happened there wasn't a redemption, it was a collapse in real time. A collapse that not only developed on the track, but was created between accumulated errors, controversial decisions, and most seriously, a leak that would change everything. From the first day, the atmosphere was charged. In the sprint classification, nerves were on edge. Ferrari had been suffering with the balance of the SF25, an unstable car in the middle curve, and surprisingly fragile in defensive maneuvers. Charles Leclerc, trying to maximize performance, lost control at turn 10. The car skidded and generated a double yellow flag just as Lewis Hamilton completed his most competitive lap. Here the first fracture point occurred. The warning signal was barely visible for a fraction of a second, and yet the FIA decided to investigate Hamilton for ignoring a double flag zone. That investigation concluded in a light warning, the first of the season for the Briton, and although at first it did not seem serious, an alarm went off at Ferrari. Were they measuring their star driver with a different yardstick? But that incident was just the beginning of a chain of misfortunes. Sunday's race offered a new opportunity, although it all ended up being a nightmare. In turn 1, just beginning the competition, Carlos Sainz, driving the Williams, touched Hamilton's SF25 from behind. The impact was strong enough to alter the car's behavior, but not enough to immediately remove it. The situation worsened dramatically at the end of a lap when Hamilton, in an aggressive attempt to overtake Franco Colapinto on the main straight, misjudged and rear-ended the Argentine's Alpine. The result was devastating. The Ferrari's front wing was destroyed, and worse still, part of the structure was embedded under the floor of the car. This generated an estimated loss of between 35 and 40 downforce points. To put it in perspective, when Hamilton hit a groundhog in Canada mid-year, he lost 20 charge points due to damage to the car's floor, which was equivalent to half a second per lap. In Brazil, the magnitude of the damage was almost double. What that meant in terms of driving was brutal. The SF25 was practically undrivable, and yet Ferrari decided to keep it on the track. Here we entered territory where technical logic and strategy began to collide with reality. The decision to keep Hamilton spinning, despite the deplorable state of the car, can only be understood under one reading. They wanted her to serve the penalty imposed by the stewards in that same race and not drag her to the next one. But that insistence came at a very high cost. For 37 laps, Hamilton was behind the wheel of a broken car, losing time, out of rhythm, and completely disconnected from a competitive pack. Finally, on lap 38, Ferrari ordered the abandonment. But the damage was not just mechanical, it was institutional. That decision revealed a very marked internal tension. Ferrari had not only mismanaged a race, it had exposed its new star driver to public humiliation, broadcast live to millions. What seemed like a sporting error soon revealed itself to be the prologue to something much deeper and more dangerous, a fracture between Ferrari and the FIA. Because the real problems were just beginning. The leak that broke out after the Brazilian GP was not simply another paddock controversy. It was an institutional earthquake that exposed structural failures within the FIA commissioner system, and that, for Ferrari, represented irrefutable proof that the organization's decisions had not been taken with the rigor that a category like Formula One demands. What at first seemed like just another sanction in a chaotic race turned into a scandal that called into question the credibility of the regulations and the incident evaluation procedure. The first signs that something was not right came a few hours after Hamilton's retirement. Internal sources in the paddock began to leak that the official documents on the collision between Ferrari number 44 and Colapinto's Alpine contained statements contradictory to the technical evidence. When the leak was made public, a series of inconsistencies were revealed that set off all the alarms in Maranello. According to the leaked content, the stewards had ruled that Hamilton was fully responsible for the incident with Colapinto, relying only on the superficial description of the contact, classifying it as minor and of low sporting incidents. But the most serious thing was not the conclusion, but what they did not do. They did not review the complete telemetry of the Ferrari, nor the lateral acceleration data, nor the onboard images that the team had delivered immediately after the race. This abandonment of procedure is what unleashed the indignation. The leak revealed that Ferrari's report, which contained the complete sequence of the hit, was not considered during the deliberation prior to the sanction. Instead, the stewards used an incomplete fragment of external video where the impact seemed smaller than it actually was. Telemetry demonstrated that, at the time of contact, the SF-25 suffered a peak deceleration that exceeded that recorded in incidents previously classified as serious collisions. If it had been evaluated correctly, the sanction would have been different or, as Ferrari maintained, possibly there would have been no sanction at all. The outrage grew even more when specialized journalists pointed out that the leaked report did not coincide with the final document published by the FIA. There were variations in wording and critical omissions relating to the technical data of both cars involved. Furthermore, it was discovered that the FIA had used a generic justification, the same worded almost identically in different incidents from previous years, which suggested a possible template of sanctions that did not fit the specific case. This leak generated a domino effect. On social networks, engineering experts analyzed the leaked onboard videos frame by frame and concluded that Hamilton did not have full visibility of the blind spot where Colapinto was located due to the initial damage caused by the contact with signs. That detail never appeared in the official resolution. The absence of cross-references between previous incidents, as required by regulation, was also ignored. And the most controversial thing was discovering that the stewards had made their decision before Ferrari had completed sending the data, which meant that the sanction was practically dictated without having all the evidence available. All of this generated a feeling of distrust that spread quickly among several teams. In the paddock, anonymous voices began to suggest that the FIA was acting in haste due to the accumulation of investigations over the weekend, an excuse that Ferrari found unacceptable. The perception was clear. They had not acted with impartiality or professionalism. In that context, the leak became a catalyst. Ferrari interpreted this lack of rigor as a direct affront to their credibility and the commitment that Hamilton had made to them. What until then was just sporting frustration became a political challenge. The Scuderia now had evidence that decisions affecting Hamilton's career may have been made under incomplete criteria, and that revelation set the stage for Frédéric Vasseur's most explosive reaction since he took charge of the team. The post-race press conference was unusually tense. Most teams opted for silence or vague answers, but Vasseur took the microphone with unwavering conviction. In a firm voice, he charged that Ferrari had been deliberately ignored during the assessment of the Hamilton incident. What he said was not simply a complaint. It was a direct accusation. The FIA had failed in its most basic test analysis procedures and had compromised the fairness of the championship. It was a frontal attack, bluntly, towards the body that regulates the sport. This outburst does not come from nowhere. It is the consequence of an accumulation of frustrations. From poor tire management in Australia to botched strategy decisions in China, Ferrari has been losing ground not only on the track, but in the corridors of power. The Brazil case was the straw that broke the camel's back. And what makes this situation unique is that, for the first time in a long time, Ferrari is not just protesting. He is taking an active and confrontational political stance that could cause a domino effect on other teams. What began as an accident on the track has escalated to become one of the biggest governance crises that F1 has experienced in recent years. Vasseur's bombshell is not just an explosive statement. It is a turning point. And what happens in the coming weeks, whether it be an apology, a regulatory review, or an escalation of conflicts, will define not only the rest of the season, but the balance of power between the teams and the FIA for years to come. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.